I'm very glad also to have 4 energy agencies with us, discussing a little on their perspective. So we have the Austrian Energy Agency with Nicole Harv, that we'll invite also to join us and sit over here. Also from Greece, from CRES, Andreas Andrastopoulos. From ENEA, Italy, Fabio Zanghirella, here you are. And from CAPE, Poland, Karolina Junak. So thank you for joining us. We're going to have a different configuration. So we're going to go through some debate on certain topics, and I hope that you enjoyed these parts. Then we'll go for the second part, and I'll be glad to introduce the second speakers in a while. So thank you for joining us and for your availability to discuss a little on the EPBD and get some of your views. So as we have seen now, Thank you, Alexander. So we have seen that the EU legislation is pushing a lot in terms of building decarbonization, improving the building stock in order to achieve targets for 2050. I would like to get a reaction from your side in terms what is the perspective that you see that are the critical points in your views for us to achieve those 2050 targets. Perhaps I would start with Nicole.
Thank you, yes. The critical point in Austria is, or the first critical point is to know which building to refurbish. It's not so easy to define the buildings. The problem is that a huge amount of buildings doesn't have an EPC, so we do not know the energy performance of these buildings. And even if we would have EPCs, or we have a lot of EPCs, they are distributed among different databases where not everyone has access to. So, for example, we have the national EPC database where not a lot of EPCs can be found, but we have the databases of the federal states, the 9 federal states in Austria. So they have EPCs where all others do not have access to. Then if we need a building permit for new buildings, for example, the EPC is handed over to the municipality. So there are different authorities who have EPCs, and they are not stored at one space at the moment. So that's a critical point, and we have to know our performance of the buildings because we have to select the buildings which we want to refurbish, and we have to have a step-by-step definition of which buildings we refurbish first and which are later on the agenda. That's one, yeah, these are the first 2 points. And then we have to decide, do we want to refurbish single family houses, for example, because in Austria we have more than 50% of single family houses, or do we want to refurbish the multifamily houses? So we also have to define a strategy in this point. And if we have defined this strategy, we have to increase or raise the interest in refurbishments among the great public. So they have to know the benefits, they have to know the performance of their buildings, and they have to know the possibility of the measures, which measures are suitable for their explicit building, not for any building, but for their building. And therefore, the EPC and the Building Renovation Passport is a very good instrument in the communication process to the building owners. And yeah, of course, we have improvement potential at the EPCs and the building performance, building renovation passports, but that's another point. And the 4th point, which is very important and which is a critical point, is that we have to offer funding systems, especially for those buildings which we want to refurbish step by step. These would be the 4 main critical points, I would say.
Thank you, Nicole. Quite challenging points. Andreas, from your perspective, at the EU level, more as a broad generic approach, what are the critical points that you see from press?
As you probably all understand, we come up with new challenges for the EPBC RECAST. So that makes a lot of more work to do and to be much better prepared to do it. So in terms of Greece, we have already established, I think, a good EPC system with quite informative EPC format certificate and a database for all these important findings and outcomes. So I would like to base our attention mainly now into consistency of actions. So the Greek government should be well aware of what they have to do and be prepared what their targets should be, and somehow prepare also the necessary regulatory aspects that we in Greece take a lot of time to prepare and to vote. So we lose time there. So I think from the Greek point of view, this is an important task that we should work and be prepared, because we only have 2 years, and 2 years in Greece is nothing. So a fast reaction to the setting up of the national goals. So we must prepare the goals, and we have to prepare them fast, and then also design the way of how better implement them during the duration. That's from my side.
Thank you, Andreas. Fabio, what are your views in terms of critical points for the whole EPBD?
Yeah, the whole EPBD. I mean, if we are talking about the complete decarbonization of the building stock, it's not just about the EPBD, according to me. It's just more systemic. Because, I mean, if we are going to have a zero emission buildings in 25 years, more or less, then we have, according to me, let's say a building level and also a system level, because then we are going to have a lot of refurbishment, a lot of renovation, and then we need to individuate it and to know exactly where to go and to refurbish. But probably it won't be enough, because the energy that still will be needed, then we'll have to come probably from district heating and or the grid. And then probably there is also, for having a complete decarbonization, is also something which is related not only to the EPBD, but also to the EED, because also the district heating has to be not only high efficient, but has to be fully decarbonized. Otherwise, there is not a matching. There is not a matching. So, and to be more practical from the Italian point of view, what we are going to do, what we have to do, let's say immediately, is to fix our goals and to check and to target the buildings we are going to renovate in few years.
Looking at the Italian energy mix, going for the decarbonization, as you mentioned, is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, but I mean, we are so.
Okay,
we'll talk
about that later. Carolina, what is your perspective in terms of what you're getting from the EPBD at European level? What are the critical points?
So for me, there are 4 main critical points. The first one are the foundations, which are already laid, so the EPBD RECAST. So we must now see how the transposing and timing, and we have to carry on the tests for SRI, for example, and hope for the best. The second critical point is subsidize or loans, because there are people who have houses, they are like 60 years old, and they are asking auditors why they should renovate if the payback period is 50 years, for example. They won't be alive in 50 years. So what's the point? The third point is education, but not only in the sense that we should educate property owners or managers that EPCs are very important, but I'm talking about education of labor, of workforces. In CAPE, we had Build Up Skills project, and we don't have thousands of labor to carry on thermomodernizations. So what's the point when we will have to modernize 16% of our building stock if we don't have nobody to do it? So it's very important to educate future workers and to teach them new technologies also, because they are trained in more traditional sense. And the fourth point is quality control of EPCs. I've been in one school a few weeks ago and wanted to see their documentation. So the person went, got me the documentation, and the pages were ripped off. It wasn't in database, so we don't really know what's in the building. So we should ensure the control that if we have to thermomodernize a building, we should know what's in their walls, what's their U value. So that's for me.
It's very interesting that you mentioned the workforce. I've seen some comments from other countries saying that we could have the money, we could have the tools, we could have everything, but we don't have the workforce to achieve the targets that are needed. So I'm pretty sure that you will agree that there's a challenge with the workforce in order to implement the 2050 targets that we have. Very well. So let's dive a little on your specific countries and the work of the agencies on EPCs, building renovation passports, digital tools, and etc. You mentioned a while ago databases, the 9 regions that you have. I know it's challenging to manage all of that. How do you see evolving the EPCs with a combined approach, specifically on the databases, the introduction of the renovation passport, the building logbook, and the work of the agency? What you can say about it?
So first of all, zero emission building is not only existing of its building envelope. We also need passive systems or adequate building technologies to serve the building. And these are passive cooling, passive heating technologies, energy storage systems, digital control systems, control concepts and mechanisms. And all these technologies have to be calculated in a way, or their effect on the energy performance of a building has to be calculated. And that is missing in the EPCs at the moment. So that would be the basis to be able to use building renovation passports and the EPCs on a broader basis. And if we have included all these calculation methodologies in our standards and then in the software tools itself, we have, like Carolina said, we have to train our EPC issues, for example, and the technicians, the professionals, because in Austria, for example, if you are a master builder or an installer and you have finished your education 30 years ago, you are allowed to issue EPCs, for example. So you didn't have training in the meantime, or obligated training in the course of EPC issuance. So it would be very advisable to create some kind of education for EPC issues, for professionals, and also for the workforce. That's a very important point, to be able to really realize zero emission buildings. And then if we talk about building renovation passports and all the digital tools we have heard today, we have to convince the EPC issuers to use the tools, and they have to have a very user-friendly surface. It has to be understandable and easy to use for the EPC assessor. Then they will continue to use it. And we heard it today already that the EPCs have a very long validity. So if I issue an EPC today, it will be valid for 10 years or 5 to 10 years. And that's a long period. And I think it's important to implement digital tools or new indicators right away or in the near future, because if we do that in 5 or 10 years, then the EPCs which are issued today are already old in a few years. So I would think that's quite impossible, quite important.
Would you like to give us an example on how the Austrian Energy Agency is dealing with the EPCs and the implementation of renovation passports, or any support at national and local level that you want to highlight for us?
To highlight, especially we have in Salzburg, it's a good practice example. We have a kind of logbook where you have available all EPCs of a special building. You can have your renovation passport where you see a step-by-step renovation proposal for your building. And if you want to do a single measure, for example, you can do that. But you have to be sure that you can reach a zero emission building in the future. So you have to have very energy efficient measures implemented. And you can also see, for example, your energy consumption or the photovoltaic gains. So it's a logbook, and it's in use in one federal state, and other federal states are looking at the experiences, and hopefully they will also adapt this.
It's good to see that you have already embedded that step-by-step approach with the view of the
Yes,
2050
yes,
the
yes.
targets,
Yeah.
which is quite interesting. Hopefully you can address that example to the other regions in Austria. Andreas, you mentioned the national goals as a challenge. I know that CRES also has a lot of experience on the topic of EPCs and etc. Looking at those EPCs, renovation passport, digital logbooks, what do you see? What would be the challenges for CRES? And any example that you want also to highlight of the work you're doing?
Yes, CRES has always been an energy agency that wanted to help people understand what energy efficiency is, as well as renewable energy sources are. So it didn't change. This role and scope still exists. And so our main goal is to persuade people to understand first, what are the benefits of energy efficiency in buildings, most, especially here in this room, and then try to implement some measures that will end up with energy efficiency, as well as renewable energy sources. In the particular case, application of energy sources in the building sector, no matter that is a single family house, multi-family house, and an even bigger, of course, commercial or office buildings. So our main goal is to continue doing this according, of course, to the guidelines set from the Commission and the Greek laws, which actually most of the times are approximately the same. So from that point of view, I can guarantee that our scope, our objectives are not going to change, and that's what we are going to do. Apart from that part is the part that we also have being the advisor of the ministry regarding energy matters. So this also is not going to change. So our main challenge is to persuade the ministry that to be precise on the steps that we have to take. So not to be away from our targets, set our targets well. So a closer collaboration with the ministry and the authorities, I think it's one of our main challenges. And of course, to be also able to work with them in order to first set up the specific goals we want to achieve for Greece, and of course, be able to fulfill all the requirements and the new, let's say, indicators that are coming with the EPBD recast.
Now that no one is hearing us, do you think that you'll be able to convince the ministry of the future targets that we have on the EPBD?
A nice example is the SRI, that we have a cluster, a Greek cluster for the SRI, and we somehow managed to persuade with the work of all the other Greek universities and research centers to the Greek government to enroll in the test phase of the SRI. So I think it's a very good sign that things are going to move on faster.
Hope you can continue with that approach. Fabio, coming back to Italy, and I know that in ENEA you have a lot of experience in many areas, but you in particular also with EPCs, and now looking at the renovation passport and logbooks and etc.
Yeah.
What has been the good examples that you have, and what are also the critical aspects you see?
Yeah, well, first of all, in Italy, ENEA is not the only body dealing with EPC, so there are a lot of not only stakeholders, but also other public bodies which are assisting our ministry. So we are not the only ones in charge of it. We are dealing mainly with the national database, the national EPC database. I would say that our experience in managing the national database, it's let's say a good experience in trying to harmonize information coming from a lot of local bodies. We have 21 local bodies, regional and provincial bodies, which have their own databases, and then we are the collector of this information. And one lesson learned from our experience is well, the need to a deeper harmonization from the beginning of the process to have a common quality control procedures and also a common, let's say, also IT interfaces. So something that we have seen also in the project today. And regarding this digitalization, we are working very hard. Now we are working on the future or to come building performance database. We are collecting information from several sources which are incoherent at the moment, because there are information from the national EPC databases, but also the databases for fiscal deduction, the database from the tax agency, the databases from the building cadastre. So we are trying to collect all this information for this building performance database, which will be, let's say, the base for the current status of a building and also for its, let's say, future development, future refurbishment from here to 2050.
I know that it's not just Austria. In Italy, you also have the regional approach and the regional databases. How are you dealing with combining or at least aggregating information at national level from these EPCs databases, looking also at the future?
Well, we agreed. Well, we agreed on a minimum set of parameters that the regions have to transfer every year to the national database. At the moment, fortunately, as ENEA, we are also managing some of these regional databases, which make us our life easier, let's say. But each region has, of course, the right to choose whether provider or internal or external for their database. So the process is to previously agree with the regions on a specific set of data, and we have, let's say, 2 levels of data. Now, at the moment, we are working on the minimum one, but I would say that for the future implementation of the new EPBD, probably that's my hope, let's say. It's not the position of our agency, but probably for a better implementation of the EPBD, probably going to the further step with a broader setup of parameters would be unavoidable, I would say.
And I think the EPBD gives you the framework to request that information, as you have to store all the necessary inputs for the recalculation in the database.
Indeed.
Okay, Carolina, not only with these three agencies, but also with CAPE, we have been involved in several projects, and I know that you are also dealing with EPCs and such. What are your views in terms of the challenges that we have implementing what we have in the EPBD?
So the first challenge is just like the one in Austria. People who obtained their degrees 10 years ago can create EPCs without any training. We don't have any training for EPC experts and auditors, which is a problem because their knowledge is not updated. Secondly, we don't have software. We only use private softwares, or people are even calculating EPCs in Excel, so that's another problem. Another one is our database. It's very closed. You don't have many information in it, so I think it should be demolished and rebuilt completely. I think that's the only way to create a tool to help with thermomodernization of our stock building. Yes, and at CAPE we are ministry experts. We create many reports and expertises for our ministry. We've created a long-term renovation strategy for Poland. We've created energy classes, 2 reports, one before EPBD and second after EPBD. The revision was announced, and now we will have 2 meetings with ministry. The first one will be about building renovation passports and EPCs. And the second one will be about SRIs. So hopefully it will go well and they will see our vision.
Okay. Thank you. And it's good that you mentioned software, because these 4 great projects that we have seen today addressed also software. And I think this is a good opportunity to put a very last question for you, which I know that you have been very well engaging with the presentations that we had. So I would invite you to highlight from what you have seen, give us an example of what you are taking back home, of something that you really spotted, something that you would like to implement or as a good practice from the 4 projects.
There is the study about mapping the stakeholder needs. So I think that is very important to have a real analysis. What are the stakeholder needs, to be able to define the benefits or arguments, especially targeted to these stakeholders, to be able to convince them or to enhance them, engage them in renovation activities and setting up or implementing EPBD issues. So that is one point. The other one is how to overcome the performance gap. I think that's a quite interesting point, because people hardly understand a heat energy demand or what's included in a heat energy demand. So having the consumption included in a specific way would help understanding, I think. Then the user-friendly appealing of an EPC is another point which is very important, like using infographics, for example. Such things would be very valuable to for end users to understand the EPCs and understand the quality of the building envelope. For example, if I have a building designed on the EPC and you see the walls are red and the windows are green, so it's logic, green is good, red is bad. So such issues would be good to grab and to implement in our design. This SRI calculation is one point which is very interesting, which is useful, as well as the digital tools for the on-site visits. They are also very helpful, and yes, a lot of other issues. And I think our our task is to collect all these information, all the tools, the benefits, and the functions of the tools, and to select the ones which are very useful for the Austrian methodology, and then to design and to develop or formulate solutions how to improve our methodology in Austria. And I think it's a task of energy agencies to force stakeholders to discuss with each other and to develop a really good methodology.
Great to see that you didn't just take one best practice, but a whole menu of best practices.
Whole menu, and we pick the best and try to implement.
Andreas, now you're pressured. How many items are you taking back home as a good examples from today?
All of them. No, really. I can't distinguish. Sorry, I won't help you, Rui. But to be honest, I was really surprised to see that many projects are working from different angles, but for the same subject, which is, of course, energy efficiency building. And they develop their own way, and they look at it at a completely thorough way. I mean, very good background for equations, calculations, use of tools. And I think that's the only way we can proceed. We all know that the technology has come up with very new, good tools, and we can use them. I'm not going to say anything, be more precise, but I am talking about AI, I'm talking about Internet of Things, I'm talking about digitization. Okay, let's put also flexibility, grid flexibility in the near future. And we also use drones. The drones can give us many important aspects related to buildings. Why don't we take advantage of these aspects in order to make our lives better and, of course, our houses more energy efficient? So I think that the collaboration of all these technologies, it will be for the benefit of all. And in the near future, I'm sure that we are going to see projects combining these technologies together for the same target. I would base my attention to standardization. It has been already mentioned. We saw also a very nice presentation from the Uni, the Italian team. We are working in another project, the EasySRI, in which we have collaboration with the Austrian Standardization Agency for other kind of, for SRI actually, automation systems. I think it's a very important aspect because the future relies on procedures, and the most well-approved procedures are coming from standards. So it's a very good time to work on this kind of procedures, documents, which are widely accepted and more easily to be followed. Harmonization, it's another subject that I also had the opportunity to pinpoint. It is a big subject. We are all working for the same reason. It's not an easy task. It's actually, I would say, a very difficult task. We are trying to find points and pick up some points in which we have common procedures. We have to make these points more. That's the only thing I can say for the time being. The tools, the new tools regarding the indicators, like the renovation passports, like the LCA analysis, like the global warming potential, are something that we, even if we don't want it, we have to take it into account, because that's the only way if we want to keep our planet living. So it had to come to the buildings, and actually it came. They also think about implying the so-called emissions trading scheme in buildings. So you probably understand how important is this problem of the greenhouse gas emissions and what we can do in order to mitigate the atmospheric problems. Last but not least, I would simply want to state that we must not forget that the EPCs are a great tool, and they can be a great tool for both the users and, of course, the policymakers. They look at it at completely different angles, but we have to make it well understood from both sides. This is our work. So one part is very well worked on. I'm talking about the policy makers part, but we still have a lot of work to do in order to persuade the final and the most important part, which is the tenants.
Okay. Thank you, Andreas. Fabio, same question for you.
Yeah, so what I'm taking home from today, well, I don't want to repeat what Nicole and Andreas already said, but well, a lot of hints, really. I had to admit that I knew some of the projects, but some other not so in deep. And some of them, I was really amused from some of them. For instance, I really thought, I thought really interesting the crossCert one. Very interesting the work they've done for this, let's say, harmonization exercise, and I think it's a bit of a pity that this concept of the EPC and full EPC harmonization couldn't find its proper place in the final version of the EPBD. Maybe for the next one. I mean, we are going towards that direction, and so probably the work of crossCert will be very useful even in the future. And then I found very interesting so the different methodologies, calculation methodologies, for instance, the fact that in EPC RECAST they used a very consolidated tools for energy calculation, and then they adapted it in the, let's say, European context, and it was really interesting. And also regarding the EU SuperHub, well, the platform, according to me, could be very interesting and useful in an optic of one-stop shop, because there is this platform where you can do a, let's say, simplified analysis, energy analysis for this with this not the calculated one, but with the simplified buildings. And then there is a link with this forum and the connection with the professional and so on. So it could be really useful for the one-stop shop. And finally, I brought the two EPC. I would say that it was really interesting to see. It was almost perfect for the, let's say, building renovation plan. No, sorry, the building passport. I'm really sorry. I mean, the idea of putting recommendation, but also taking into consideration what is going to happen in 20 years. I mean, if the roof is going to be maintained, if the boiler is going to be substituted in not just today, but in even if I just substituted the boiler or the heat generator, then it's really interesting to already know that in 20 years, probably I will have to do something to the facade or to the roof or to the energy system. So those are some of the hints that I'm going to take home.
And I agree
today.
with you. The final remark you made is a great added value for the building renovation passport and for its content. Carolina, the same of you. Before we end, what's your views from what you had from the projects?
Well, I think it's wonderful to see so many great and different ideas for the same thing, which is EPC. I think that every project has something that every state member could take so pinpoint and take, oh, this will be great in our EPCs because like of our climate or because of our other things that are happening in the country. So I think in crossCert it's wonderful that you can see what other countries have in their EPCs, what works, what doesn't work. Like in Poland, we have problem with recommendations, so we could see what other countries do with their recommendation and take those things and tell the ministry our hints for better EPC. I really liked all the KPIs from other project. I think everyone can choose something and create EPC with KPIs that they want. The same goes for measuring method, digital measuring method, and that application for iPad. I think it would be a great tool for assessors. So I think we could even combine, for example, KPIs with IB Road to EPC modular thing. So they have 21 KPIs, so we can create modules which will be perfect to create a comprehensive tool for building owner or manager. So yeah, I think every project is great in their own way and everyone can choose something for it.
Thank you so much for your availability, for your perspective of the challenges we have, both at the EU, both at the national level, and from the examples. I'm pretty sure that most of us identified with some of the challenges that you mentioned, because for sure it's some of the challenges that we also have at national level. I will invite all for a round of applause for our speakers, and we go directly for the second panel. Thank you.